Good morning. Today we are going to be talking about long division and how multiplying and dividing are opposite operations. So the reason you need to know that multiplying and dividing are opposite operations is because if you have a sentence that says 633 divided by 3 equals 211 and you want to check to see if that's right, you could do the dividing again, or you can just multiply going backwards. So you can take 211 times 3 to see if you get 633. If you do, then it's correct. If you don't, then it's wrong. Let's review the steps of long division. Remember to put DMSCB, especially if you have trouble, and walk yourself through the steps. So the first step is to divide. Divide means I'm counting by 3 until I get close to 24. Obviously 3 doesn't go into 2 because 2 is smaller than 3, so I put a 0. Make sure you line up your numbers, so the 0 needs to go above the 2. So then I'm trying to figure out how many times 3 goes into 24. So I count by 3s, look down my 3s chart on my multiplication chart if I need to, and it goes in 8 times. So I put 8 up here. I check it off. Then I go to multiply. You always multiply what's on top times what's in front. So 8 times 3 is 24. Then you subtract. 24 minus 24 is 0. Then you check. This number that you got when you subtracted has to be smaller than your divisor. So 0 has to be smaller than 3. If it is not, then you know that the 8 was too small and you need to try a bigger number. Since it is, we're going to go to B, bring down in box. I've already used 24, so I'm going to go bring down the 6, and I'm going to put it in a box. The reason I put it in a box is so that when I go to my next step, which is to divide again, I know that I'm dividing what's in the box by 3. So I'm counting by 3s until I get close to 6. So I get 2. And again, I multiply, and I get 6. I subtract, I get 0. I check, 0 has to be smaller than 3, which it is. So now I'm going to bring down my 8, and I'm going to box it. Then every time I bring down a box, I go up and I divide again. So 8 divided by 3 goes 2 times. 2 times 3 is 6. Subtract, I get 2. Now I can put it as a remainder sometimes. Sometimes I want to write it as a fraction. So I put the remainder 2 over the divisor 3, and I get 2/3 as my remainder. But if it wants a decimal, I would add a 0. I would add a decimal first, add a decimal behind the 8, add a decimal behind the 2 up here. And then I would add a 0 behind the 8, bring it down next to the 2 and divide again. And I would keep doing that, adding a 0, bring down a 0, divide again, if I need to get a decimal instead of a remainder. If you still have questions about how to do long division, make sure you watch some YouTube videos on how to do long division. So let's take a look at your workbook. We're on pages 15 and 16. So here's page 15. Remember to pause the video after each question, solve all of it in your spiral notebook before you go to the next question. So on question number 1, they want us to know if this is true or not. Is 1,350 divided by 5 going to be 270? Remember to check it, you multiply going backwards. So you're going to take 270 times 5 to see if you get 1,350. For B, you're going to take 933 times 4 to see if you get 3732. So you're going to do that for each of these. So it's going to take up at least a whole page in your spiral notebook to multiply all these out. Don't forget on these ones you got to do 2-digit multiplication where you add a 0 before you go to the second set of numbers. On D, make sure you put 122 on top. So 122 times 13 and then do 2-digit multiplication. Solve all of those before you go on to problem 2. On problem 2, you're doing the same thing. You're going to multiply going backwards. So 22.2 times 11 to see if it's 222.2. So you're going to do that for all of those. Again, it's going to take you a whole page in your spiral notebook to do all the multiplying. Careful when you're multiplying 2-digit numbers. If you don't remember how to multiply 2-digit numbers, go on YouTube and watch a video on how to multiply 2-digit numbers. On question number 3, it says a one-celled organism measures 32 millimeters in length in a photograph. Now remember, a one-celled organism is so small you cannot see it without a microscope. So it is tiny, tiny, tiny. If the photo has been enlarged by a factor of 100, what is the actual length of the organism? That means that the actual organism is 100 times smaller. So we're going to be taking 32 divided by 100. for question number 3 because your answer is going to be really tiny. Okay, question number 4. Question number 4 is just like question number 1. You're going to multiply going backwards. So you're going to take 12 times 25 to see if you get 300 and do the same thing for each of these. Question number 5. A deer tick measures 29 centimeters in length in a photograph. If the photo has been enlarged by a factor of 100, what is the actual length of a deer tick? So again, if it's been enlarged, it means it was made bigger. So the actual length is smaller. So we're going to take 29 divided by 100 for number 5. On number 6, you're going to do long division. And you want to do first long division and find out what it would be with the remainder, or if it has a remainder. Then you're going to do, you want to add a decimal, add a 0, bring down a 0, and divide until you get a decimal. So 2 of these are right. On question number 7, again, you're going to do long division. 1 to find out if it has a remainder, and then 1 to find out what the decimal would be if you add a decimal, bring down a 0, and divide again. Solve all of these problems, pause your video, solve all these problems in your spiral notebook before you go on to the next part of the video. Okay, let's look at question number 1. So on question number 1, for A, you multiply and you do get 1350, so that's yes. For B is a yes, C is a no, D is a yes. And remember, when you're doing 2-digit multiplication, when you get to the second digit, you have to put a 0 first before you multiply everything by 1. And then you add the 2 bottom rows. Question number 2, A is no, B is yes, C is yes, D is yes. For question number 3, remember you're dividing by 100. When you divide by 100, you're going to move the decimal twice to the left because there's 2 zeros on 100. So you move 32, the decimal's behind the 2, you move it twice to the left, so your answer is 0.32. When you're dividing by sets of 10, the number of zeros tells you how many times you're going to move the decimal to the left. Let's look at question number 4. On question number 4, A is yes, B is yes, C is yes, D is no. And again, be careful with your multiplying, 2-digit numbers, and then also if it has a decimal in the question, make sure it has a decimal in the answer. Okay, question number 5. We're going to be taking 29 divided by 100. So again, I move the decimal twice to the left and I get 0.29. For question number 6, I get 314.5. And then I change the half to a decimal by dividing. So 1 divided by 2 and I get 0.5. Or it could have been a remainder, 314 remainder 1. Those are the 3 ways to write the answer. One with a remainder, one with it as a fraction. You put your remainder over your divisor to get 1/2. And 1, I changed the 1/2 to a decimal. Question number 7, I got 100, remainder 15, and then I added a decimal, added a 0, brought down a 0, and divided again, and I got 100.6 as my decimal. If you have any questions, email me. Have a great day.